In the year 435 AD, the once great Empire of Rome was on the brink of complete collapse. After several years of seemingly endless conflict with a new nomadic tribe called the Huns, the Romans were finally ready to make a deal. The Huns had only recently appeared in Europe. They originally came from the steppes of Central Eurasia. In 370 AD, they had migrated all the way to the edge of Eurasia, settling down in what is today Eastern Europe. In just a few decades, they quickly established themselves as the dominant tribe in Eastern Europe, dominating vast territories, displacing the existing Europeans, and ultimately threatening the Roman Empire. Even 100 years earlier, the newfound power of the Huns would have been quite manageable for the seemingly unstoppable Romans. However, at this point in the empire's decline, Rome was just a shadow of its former greatness. The encroaching Huns were a serious concern, one which couldn't be taken lightly. Subsequently, Emperor Theodosius II made the decision to choose diplomacy over conflict, a decision more out of necessity than preference. Theodosius sent a diplomatic mission, headed by General Flavius Plinta, to meet with the Huns in the city of Margus, in what is now modern-day Serbia. The leader of the Huns was a short, stocky, flat-nosed warrior in his mid-30s. His name was Attila, otherwise known as Attila the Hun. He was the leader of a large and loosely connected empire, consisting not only of his native Hun tribe, but also Ostrogoths, Alans, and Bulgars. Together, these tribes made up an empire which dominated virtually all of Eastern Europe, reaching out into the steppes of Central Eurasia. This vast territorial domain of the Huns made their leader Attila one of the most powerful rulers in all of world history. During his meeting with the Roman representatives, Attila is said to have remained sitting on his horse for the entire time. This was an extremely humiliating gesture, especially since it was directed at the emperor of the once great Roman Empire. Apart from being hugely self-confident, Attila was intelligent and cunning. He knew the Romans were weak. That is why he made utterly ridiculous demands during their meeting. He told the Romans that he would leave them alone only if they paid a ridiculous amount of money in return. He demanded a tribute of 700 pounds of gold per year, which is worth roughly 13.3 million US dollars in today's money. At the time, this was quite a significant sum, especially since the Romans had recently lost most of their productive gold mines in Hispania, modern-day Iberia, to the Visigoths and the Vandals in the early 5th century AD. This was not, however, the worst of his demands. Attila also went on to insist that the Romans could not enter into any alliance with any other tribes if he, Attila, deemed the alliance to be a threat to his empire. In making this demand, Attila was essentially giving himself control of Rome's foreign policy and military affairs. By accepting Attila's terms, the Romans would not only be financially drained, but they would also be militarily handicapped. Unfortunately for the Romans, they were not in a position to negotiate. They were economically collapsing, culturally disintegrating, and surrounded on all sides by powerful enemies, and they were terrified of what Attila might do. So they agreed, and Rome's consul, Flavius Plinta, signed the Treaty of Margus with Attila the Hun in 435 AD. The peace didn't last long. In 440 AD, only 5 years later, Attila declared that Rome had violated the treaty. Subsequently, he gathered his forces on the Roman borders once again and prepared for battle. The Huns sent demands to the Romans saying that if they were not unconditionally met, Attila and his men would cross into Roman territory. Emperor Theodosius initially refused Attila's demands, believing that he could defeat the Huns in battle. Had this been an earlier time, he probably would have been right. However, Rome was currently facing multiple enemies from all directions. At the same time, Attila was preparing to invade. Theodosius was busy fighting off other barbarian tribes, including the Vandals, who had just conquered the Roman provinces in North Africa, which happened to be the empire's main source of food. In the end, Theodosius put up a good fight, but he was unable to stop the powerful Hun army. As a result of his failure in battle, he then tried to negotiate. Unfortunately for Theodosius, he he was now in an even worse position for bargaining. By 443 AD, he finally capitulated to Attila's demands. However, this time around, they were completely ridiculous. This new treaty was nothing short of absurd. Attila required that his annual tribute of 700 pounds of gold per year, already a debilitating cost for Rome, be tripled to 2,100 pounds. He also demanded an astonishing 6,000 pounds of gold up front. That was a truly unimaginable sum of money, and more than anything, a humiliating embarrassment for the now ruined empire. Theodosius and his bureaucrats tried to save face by hiding the payments through complicated or even illegal bookkeeping practices. They also made the accountants write off the money as services rendered by the Huns. In reality, this was little more than protection money. Despite these feeble attempts to maintain Rome's aura of greatness, most people could see through the charade. Rome was a shattered shell of its former self, and only signed the deal because they were too weak to stand up to Attila the Hun. And just like that, confidence in the Romans plummeted to an all-time low, thus sealing the fate of the empire. Rome would never rule the world again.